Welcome. Welcome, Margo. We are here at the beautiful Kananaskis Mountain Lodge for the CDDA AGM and convention. A big focus is mental health, safety, and we've recently learned that you are here and you are a mental fitness coach, which I love because that is a differentiating positioning statement that I have not heard yet. I love that.
Well, my feeling is we talk a lot about mental health, and to get to mental health is like physical health. And it's, to my mind, it's about getting to fitness if you're not already there, and then maintaining the fitness with what I like to refer to as a toolbox. And it can be an organizational toolbox, but it's also an individual toolbox.
And if I didn't mention your name, I want to make sure I properly introduce you as Margo Talbot, and you've written a book called All That Glitters. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I was going to take my secrets to the grave. I had no intentions of writing a book, but I thought if it could even help one person, it's worth telling my story. And now I'm a proponent of all of us telling our stories, because a lot of people with mental health issues stay in isolation. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to speak up about it. And it creates more isolation, which is the opposite of what you want. Healing is about connection, reconnecting with, society, people, nature, but ultimately reconnecting with yourself. And the main way we reconnect with ourselves is through our feelings, our emotions. Most mental health problems are underpinned by emotional imbalances. So a person could really call it emotional health.
And you mentioned isolation as a big part of that, is a big factor. And here at CDDA's convention with safety and mental health, there is a lot of challenges with the mining world. One being remote work, oftentimes 20 days on, 10 days off. So they're away from their family, they're isolated, and they're in remote areas. So that isolation plays a huge role in some of the contributing factors in the mining industry. Don't know if there's a solution or if there will ever be a solution, but we're here to promote, bring it to the surface to help with the companies advocate. And with your experience, how could one get more involved from either a leadership role, a supervisor role, to try and approach this differently?
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is you're speaking to a separation of the home life, which is the support system, and the work life, which is the stress, where the stresses can come in. The first obvious solution is to bring a support system into the workplace, whether that's the ability to have more contact with family and friends while you're in camp, or whether it's having more camaraderie. Maybe you have, maybe there's a men's group in the camp and they meet at night instead of isolating themselves in their rooms. For every camp, I think it's going to be different. For every group of men, I think it's going to be different. Men or people. I realize there are some women. I think bringing the support and connection that they've left at home into camp is an integral part of it. And that's where leaders come in, because leaders can be the bringers of that, and they can facilitate having options for those who need it.
And that would be very helpful, I believe. I'm no expert, but in behavioral culture change, because I think from helpers to drillers to supervisors, today they are, with that stress, the HR side of it seems to be dominating the work life, trying to recruit. And I think if they could improve or enhance an on-site cultural, an on-site cultural morale, then that's maybe a first step.
And it starts with the leader. When I go in to work with youth addicts, say, which I still do, I go first. And to me, a leader goes first. So a leader can express their own stresses. Some of the leaders may come from a background of working on the drilling rigs, and not just being always up in upper management. They can come in with their own experiences, their own stresses, what it felt like to be away from their wives and their children or family or friends. Go first, kick open that door from the leadership role, and I think that then they'll find the men won't feel like they have to upkeep this invincibility shield that men are trained to have in our culture. Not just the men that work in the mines. It's full across the board, and be able to reach out for connection is what we're talking about. It's not even, if you couch it in words like help or, fixing yourself or doing therapy, it's about connecting when you've left your deepest connections back in the city where you live.
Let's talk about social contact and social connections. One mentor of mine, her advice was tethering. Make sure you have a social tether to someone, especially during a pandemic, where you often were at home, working from home, you didn't have social connections. So a lot of individuals felt lost and isolated even at home, unrelated to the mining industry. So as soon as I heard that phrase, social tethering, or make sure you're reaching out and talking, because my background is marketing and communications. My background is sports. And I miss that locker room community, whether it's playing softball or playing rec social hockey, because my minor hockey leagues were way beyond. But that felt so good that was actually, we've talked a lot about light bulb moments too. So I make it a purpose to call a friend or attend a function where I could have easily just avoided a function. So I think that is a really great tip and advice that you mentioned, was social contact and making sure you hear the stories and the experiences of other people that are, in the most case, the exact same as what you're feeling and experiencing from an emotional and experience side. And so I'd love to talk more about that. I love that topic.
Well, what you're using the word tether, and I use the word connect. Connecting. We all connect in different ways. You may connect by watching sports. Many men do. Women sit around and talk about their relationships, or maybe they even talk about their fingernails. It's all connection. It just looks different on the surface. And for me, healing from my mental health struggles was all about reconnecting. And so the bring it to the surface, you bring what's preventing you from connecting up to the surface, and that is a form of connection. Admitting things to people, whether it's your life story or you miss your family, or these are the real things of life. And sure, we all, we go out there and we have to, I've worked a lot of construction jobs. I've worked in remote camps, building trails for Parks Canada, different than mining, but I get the essence of it. We all fundamentally are human and have the same needs, whether we're men or women in a camp, in an office building, doing a tech job. And it's bonding over those needs and respecting the fact that you might get your bonding watching the Montreal Canadiens, if I can be so bold, and that I might get it in a completely different way. But yes, during COVID, I think the thing that really got to people mental health-wise the most was the isolation, the disconnect, and that reaching out did become the most important thing to do, even if it was virtual.
I'm not sure if your book addresses curiosity, and it's a little bit of a sidetrack topic, but because you're an expert, I really want to pick your brain about curiosity. Curiosity to change, or just simply an individual being more curious. And again, anything I've kind of observed or the insight that I've gained in the last couple of years is if someone can be curious, then they might be open for change. Or at least more, I guess, is vulnerable to have a conversation. And so I think there's a lot of similarities and connection between curiosity and learning and changing, and again, thoughts of just being curious in today's world.
I'm a very curious person. It's interesting you bring this up. And I believe curiosity helped me heal. I was curious about other people initially. Why do people do what they do? And then, of course, it ended up coming back to me. Well, why am I doing what I'm doing? And you learn a lot. Curiosity opens up a lot of conversations. One of the things I'm watching in our world right now is I'm watching a lot of topics get politicized, and then people don't want to talk about them because they start arguing and fighting. Well, there's no need to, because I'm curious. I could pick any topic. Addiction, drug addiction. I'm curious what you think about it. You're curious what I think about it. There's no reason for it to get political or polarized. I'm so curious that I actually want to know why people believe what they believe. And I think that ultimately being curious about ourselves and how we operate not only allows us to heal, but allows us to understand other people.
I was going to mention, as a branding, marketing, communications, I've always been on the client, the agency side who services our clients. And I'm so passionate about consumer behavior or customer behavior. And, years ago, I sat in many qualitative focus groups, and I often heard negativity about qualitative focus groups. But I loved it because I got to sit and watch and learn and observe. And I just really enjoyed, I think, the person side of it, and the person within, the holistic being, because you talked about the human. And so I wanted to kind of talk more about humanizing relationships and the ability to not judge and not critique, and reading the full article or rather than the headline. And you mentioned about the political, how people just dive into the political part when there really is no need. My father had a best friend, and his best friend's passed now. They were polar opposite, but they loved just talking to each other. And there was my father's one best friend he could do that with, because I don't think they critiqued and judged each other. They just played pool and talked.
In other words, they put connection first.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the key insight. Their love for each other and their connection of each other on a human side than their belief side and their differences.
And if you bring it back to marketing and branding, which covers all of life, not just advertising, what are you doing as a marketer? You are trying to connect with your consumer. And as a consumer, what drives you? Emotional connection. So I might buy a mountain bike because I like to connect with nature. I may buy a silly blingy necklace because I want my girlfriends to laugh when I walk in the door. We are so motivated by connection that it's not even funny. Now, women are trained to be, we're socialized to be more connecting, take care of the babies, have potluck dinners where we talk about our relationships, for instance. And men are trained to connect, but in a different way. Let's connect to these hockey players on TV. But we're still both being motivated by the exact same thing.
It's so true. The motivation and the influence. So I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and I am seeing how much he is influenced by his aspirational, inspirational 2-year older sister. He's in JK, she's grade 1, And just like a side personal family story is he loves wearing the same pants, probably as most kindergartens do, like just in their comfort, same pants. And it's almost like we have to do laundry every night just to make sure those same pants are clean. And now they're getting holes in them, and they're getting tight, and they're getting short because he's growing. And he started crying one morning at the breakfast table because he couldn't wear them. And the root cause why he was crying, and we eventually got it out of him, was because he loves tight pants because his sister wears tight pants. And it was like, then we all just started bawling at the breakfast table because he actually communicated why over the last year he's been just wanting to wear the same tight Spider-Man pants.
Connection and belonging.
So, and that influence, and there's a lot of influence. I'm not a big advocate for influence, even though there's a lot of influence in marketing, but it can be the wrong on the wrong receival end of influence.
And that's why you want leaders who have healthy messaging with healthy influence. And that's what I hear you're putting together, is to get the buy-in from the leadership and the different heads of companies so that they can be the thrust of change to have a healthier social system when people are off in these camps.
It's such a great conversation talking with you, Margot. This is what we want to do. We want everyone to have just conversations with one another. So I want to just make sure we have an opportunity to talk about your book and wrap up with you, because it's just been such a theme with mental health, motivation, safety, and what we're talking about with you is that mental fitness coach to be able to, I'll let you kind of phrase it the way you would like to phrase it.
Well, to bring it back to conversation, I wrote the book for many different reasons, but it kicks open the door to honest conversation. And I'm amazed at how many people have stories that they will share with me because I shared first. Yeah, there's a power in going first. There's a power in sharing our stories. And my message to anyone struggling out there is that there is light at the end of the tunnel, even when you can't see it. And we are all infinitely more powerful than we know that we are.
Being first, that's brilliant. And that's a huge takeaway message. Do you have a website to
yes.
land on?
My website is Margo, my first name, at margotalbot.com. And I have a bunch of resources there, and I also blog a lot about mental fitness topics.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you, Brian.
appreciate it.